Welcome back, guys. We're going to talk about life, existence, the universe. Does God exist? What's going on? And I'm going to tell you some theories that I have and whether or not we are in heaven or hell. And what's your opinion? This is comic book artist, writer, and director Greg Weich from BeyondComics.tv, as I'm known here in the universe currently. So let's get right into it, okay, guys? One of the things that I think people who have suffered loss, pain, injury, people who have had tragedy in their life, it changes their perspective. If you have not experienced those things, probably you should not watch this video, because I don't want to depress anybody, and I'm trying to take those who are depressed and who are struggling and present some different options and maybe why they should continue versus not. So save this video and come back to it once you experience horrible things. I hope you don't, though. Okay, so for most human beings, eventually we experience injuries, suffering, loss, pain, a deterioration as we age, and I think it's the terrible depression that comes with the lack and limitation to do what we feel, but maybe we physically can't. So for an example, when a runner or a dancer is a better example, when a dancer spends their whole life dancing and then suddenly they get injured permanently and they can't anymore. That's torture for them. They've been given something they love and they've had it ripped away. When you have been blessed enough to be loved by someone, whoever that is, unconditionally, that you also loved unconditionally, where they were your motivation, where they helped you live your life, you had a purpose, a reason outside of yourself to make someone else you love happy, whether that's a loved one, a parent, whoever it is, a friend, whatever, a spouse, child, but then God forbid that person is taken away from you. It's almost a sick torture or torment that we've had to deal with and endure. And why go on? Why are we choosing to stay alive in a suffering environment? For what purpose, right? So I want to try to address some of those issues to the best of my abilities. And I've been studying this stuff pretty much my entire life, separately from being a certified life coach and depression and relationships and things. As many of you may know, my father was a psychiatrist, a psychoanalyst, a medical doctor, and I trained under him for my whole life. I mean, it was very eye-opening. But he was coming from a very scientific mindset. My mother is a writer for Chicken Soup for the Soul and things, coming from more of like an emotional belief, faith-based concept. So to have both of those balances, science and faith, put together into me has been very interesting, because I was blessed enough to have very supportive parents my whole life, until my father passed, unfortunately, but my mother, thank God, is still with us. And in those, that kind of support and freedom to think on my own has allowed me the real true blessing to be able to try to understand life and existence as it is, beyond opinion, beyond faith, beyond belief. One of the reasons I call my company Beyond Comics, right? Because there is a depth when you're not imposed upon from someone else, where they're imposing their views, their religion, their thoughts onto you, but where they ask you questions. What do you think? How do you feel? How are you processing existence in the world? So that, for me, has been incredibly important, but also terrifying, because by not being hammered to think a certain way, or hammered to stick to the beliefs of one religion only, is frightening, because suddenly you feel like, oh my God, what am I supposed to think? What am I supposed to believe? Until you start to realize that everyone is ascribing their own beliefs to everything. Whether you ascribe and choose to believe in what people have scientifically brought forth or what religion has brought forth. I think that there's benefits to both. I don't think that we should live in a world where everything is to the point where you have lost belief, lost faith, lost hope. You don't want to lose faith. You don't want to lose hope. You don't want to, allow that to ruin you. Some people are designed for it differently. They're made for it. So there are some people who do not believe in God and they only believe in science, and they're okay with it. They're fine. But you can't take that mindset and put it on someone who was raised their whole life to believe in angels and, in God and heaven and hell and all this stuff, and then say, hey, by the way, all that stuff, no, don't think about that, think about this. It's going to shock them. So you can't just give the information and drop them. If you give the information, you have to take those people and then try to help them acclimate into an understanding and balance so that they don't freak out. A lot of people can't handle that information because they were never given that environment to grow up in. So people who are incredibly strongly religious, they live their life, they've based their existence on the faith that they have. And it's difficult because for someone like me who writes comic book stories and who writes scripts and movie scripts and who draws comic books and who directs films, I understand and view it very differently, I think, than the average person. Because to me, I studied comparative religion, and they are like comic book stories. If you compare all the different religious backgrounds and faiths, they have the same theme in every single version. So many of them have the resurrection character or the Christ character. Now, of course, I absolutely believe that there was a man named Jesus Christ and that he did exist and that unfortunately he was tortured. It's horrendous. But whether or not he was bestowed with the powers that they claim, whether or not he was truly the soul consciousness of God embodied into the physical form of a human being, we don't know. We weren't there. We can't disprove it. We can't prove it. But according to today's current science, we have not found anything like that to be possible. So again, since people are designed to very easily believe anything that they are told, because why? You are born with amnesia. You have nothing in your head when you're born. You're born, you wake up, you're a little baby, you're looking around, a whole bunch of other babies who grew up are telling you stuff in your ears, and then you become who you are and you believe what you believe. But it doesn't matter what we believe, because the actual mathematics of the universe is what it has always been and will always be, despite what we believe or choose to fight for or think. It is what it is. The universe has existed with Earth included in it before you were born, before I was born, before any of us were here. It just has always been, as far as we're aware. So it doesn't matter if you say, I believe in God, I don't believe in God. I believe in religion, I don't believe in religion. It doesn't matter, because it is whatever it actually is in reality. Period. It doesn't. Our belief doesn't impose a change on the universal laws that exist, that we're still discovering and looking and searching for to better identify and understand and quantify and break down. So, I think of my own progression understanding life and existence, and how when I was a teenager, I always had this belief that this place, existence, life itself, was a school. And when we finish this school, we graduate to heaven, right? That's what I used to believe. I'm not saying I still don't, but that kind of still somewhat applies, but in a little bit more of an advanced kind of scientific way, if you will. So that being said, sorry, I just want to fix the camera angle here. So that being said, one of the important factors is to understand that there is room for all different types of belief, and you don't have to impose your belief onto someone else. But what you can do is present the information if they're open to receiving it and hearing it, and if they're interested in learning more. A lot of people, when they grow up, like a very religious friend of mine who kind of is realizing that a lot of the things he was taught and raised to believe does not fit into actual reality, that he's told these stories growing up to believe, and suddenly reality is very different, and he's told all these kind of, things that have to be because the book says it, for his religion. And again, it doesn't matter what his religion is, it doesn't matter. What matters is that he was taught a certain type of religious belief, and now he's realizing that it doesn't fit into his current today life. So if you think logically, well, how the heck is it possible for a book that was written thousands of years ago, for any book that was written even 100 years ago, is already outdated in regards to the society that we live in today? I totally believe that a lot of religions that have certain rules that made sense for that time were created because they fit into that time frame. For example, there are certain types of beliefs or things, like let's say Jewish people eating pork, right? I'm going to simplify a lot of this, but logically speaking, they lived in a time when that rule was written not to eat pork, okay? Because they would get trichinosis and different kind of illnesses from it, and they could not apparently clean the meat properly back then. So it was making people sick. So you know what? It's a rule. Let's not eat it, for example. Also, it happens that pigs are incredibly intelligent. So, let's not eat intelligent-based animals if possible, right? Now, of course, that doesn't always apply to everything, but this is one tiny aspect to it. I'm trying to, again, simplify. Don't come down on me too hard for simplifying this and just talking about a little part of it. But in today's society, I personally don't think one should eat intelligent creatures like a pig or, and things. And, I'm working to try to get a little bit more vegan and trying to shift that diet. So I went from being maybe 10% vegan to maybe 60% vegan now. I'm kind of trying to incorporate that into my diet. It's not easy when you've kind of gone one direction. You're trying to, improve and shift, but I'm working on it. That being said, that's just for me. If you're not and you're 100%, one way or whatever, do whatever works for you. But the point is that in today's society where we can clean meats, where people are not getting sick from eating something like pork, that rule may never have been implemented in that religion if it started today. Because today we're able to clean the meats properly and cook things properly, and there's a whole different kind of society that we live in. That's one aspect. Also, a lot of these things were written before cars existed, before internet existed, before television existed, before so many different kind of sciences existed, before the creation of I'm a comic book artist. That job didn't even exist back then. There were painters, but and things, but there weren't the type of jobs or things that exist today back then, right? We didn't understand anything back then. They used to put people in jail or kill them if they thought they were witches, which basically means someone who's a magician and can do magic tricks. You understand? They didn't understand, oh my gosh, and they would go on this witch hunt or the mob hunt, and they would try to, bash people. They do it today. People do that today. Except instead of it being witch hunts, they go after people who may have said something wrong on the internet in the past, and now they're going to come and slam them down and, prosecute them and, all this kind of stuff. It's a little out of control and off balance, obviously if someone is a bad person and they cause harm, they should be stopped. But, if someone is stupid and they're growing up and they're learning, how to be, and they say stupid things, remember the old saying, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never harm me, right? So it's what happened to being a more forgiving society? Let's give people a second chance if they haven't actually physically, permanently damaged someone. Let's try to see, as long as they haven't, psychologically destroyed someone. Let's give them a chance. Let's give people a chance, I'm concerned that we're in a society right now where we are forcing people to suppress how they really are. So if somebody, for example, if somebody's really a bad person, let's say they're like super racist or something like that, they'll hide it and we'll never know. So it seems all fine and clear, but kind of we should know, because if they are really racist, then maybe we could help them not be by trying to open their mind up to why that's backwards thinking. Do you see what I'm saying? If we frighten them into suppressing it, we won't know who is anymore. Everything's going to appear with this fake facade that everything's fine, when those people need to be kind of, woken. You know what I'm saying? They need to be woke. We need to wake them up, explain why that's a bad thing, So, not because society will come down on you for it, but I mean, it actually is a bad thing. I mean, we're all human beings, despite what this costume we wear is called skin. Whatever our skin shape and design looks like. Again, as a comic book artist, I can take clay and I can make this with my other artists or this with my other artists. It's the same clay, it's the same material, but look, they look totally different. It comes from the same stuff. So do we. You understand? So I think that's very important. Like I was saying earlier, when I was younger and I was, in school and stuff, and I'm learning and I'm trying to figure things out, I always thought, hey, well, there's good guys and there's bad guys, and the good guys need to stop the bad guys, and that's it. I never understood that sometimes things are very gray in the middle, that there's not just black and white, but there's a lot of gray. And sometimes, you have to understand both sides and the gray area in order to kind of create a solution to it, right? There's a lot of controversial topics in those things. Some people believe in a woman's right to choose and have an abortion. Others say, no, that's murdering a baby. Who's right? Who's right? Which side is right here? And who has a point? Well, guess what? They both have a point. They both have a point to a certain extent. So my suggestion would be to compromise, to come in the middle. So something like this needs to be worked out. Utilize science and show science to this side so they understand that, there's a bunch of gooey liquid that's not a human being yet the first few weeks, and maybe as long as, the person has a chance to choose, right? Because you shouldn't force someone to have a child and then the child suffers and what if the woman was raped, God forbid? You have to allow her the chance to have an abortion. But I tend to think that should happen within a few weeks, so like within maybe 6 weeks or so, 7 weeks, somewhere in that realm. Cut it off at, I don't know, the 2-month point or something like that. I mean, people who are experts in that area can figure that out. But the idea is have a compromise. I don't think a child should be aborted if it's perfectly fine and there's nothing wrong with the child or the mother at 6 months. That's insane. That's insanity. That's where this side is right. But, again, this side is also right that they have a right whether or not to choose. Now, people who use abortion as a contraceptive, that's sick. You can't do it. So let's have a 2 strikes or 3 strikes and you're out rule. If you get pregnant 3 times, no more abortions, for example. Let's have some balance. Again, this is just an example. Don't come down on me or go crazy for this. I'm just giving some ideas out there that you guys can figure out. But the idea is there has to be compromise, not fighting. Okay, I remember when I was 17 years old in school, they tried to blow up the building, the Planned Parenthood. The fanatics actually came in and put a bomb in the building, and I told everybody, hey, it's a freaking alarm, we should get out of here. Teacher's like, no, it's fine. I said, open the door. They opened the door. Everyone's evacuating the building. It was terrifying. I mean, they were trying to blow it up. That was an SVA back in the day. So it was a terrible situation. So my thought process is, wait a second, you're telling me to save unborn children, you're going to blow up and kill all the 17-year-old children who made it? You know what I mean? That's bananas. So that's where this side is totally right and this side, I don't know what happened there. But again, that's extremist of that side, so I don't want to count them as the logical version of this side who believes in saving a life. Now again, then you have belief, which is, does life enter the body the moment of conception. Well, definitely not, because it takes a few days for the sperm to reach the egg before it connects together, okay? So not the moment, okay? But again, if you're referring to the moment of conception, the moment that it does reach the egg and connect, then who knows? Is the soul in there waiting to be, turned into a human or not? Does the soul exist? Do we work autonomously? Some people believe in souls, some people don't. It's exhausting. So my suggestion is that we calm down, we try to present both sides, and we try to present logic and be open to listening to both sides and come to some kind of balanced conclusion if possible, okay? Now, that being said, going back to being tortured and trying to live through torture and through suffering and through pain, I tend to think that if you have suffered and if you have been through pain, that life is somewhat like staying in a bad relationship with someone. You understand? Like, life is like being in an abusive relationship. It's bad for you, but you can't leave it, because leaving it means you die, right? So that would be suicide, right? So you're choosing to stay alive, because suicide, well, we don't know what that could do. That might put you right back again here in a reincarnation type of deal. Maybe it'll be worse for you. Maybe you'll get stuck in limbo. There is a thought that it's important to finish out your life. We all kind of have that in us, unless someone, God forbid, has some terminal disease and they're just literally weeks away from dying and there's no cure. Then why suffer through it? Then I understand having a right to one's dignity and a right to one's choice to not live through suffering and to just let themselves, be put out, so to speak, because they're going to go anyway. So why live the end of your life suffering? I totally understand, that mindset. So I think we should not impose our belief to force someone against that, but we should allow them, a few days to see if their mind changes. So if someone's like, they want to leave life and they want to go. Don't just instantly do it. Let's give them a few days to find out, again, if they're on their deathbed, if they still feel that way, or do they want to ride it out, so it's a very depressing topic. But that being said, I want everyone to remember that if you're depressed and sad and suffering, you are still choosing to deal with that, because there's some part of you that wants to go on. Some part of you wants to be happy and wants to live and doesn't want to suffer. The question is, how do you overcome that suffering? How do you overcome that pain, the loss? How do you remember a great life and get back to that life when you can't anymore? So that means you have to create a new life. So I say, pretend you're being reincarnated every time. So just continuing, the idea is, let's say, for example, you had a wonderful childhood and you had a terrific upbringing and everything was great. And then you've reached a point in your adulthood where you've lost those people that loved you so much unconditionally, and now you live alone and you're unhappy, okay? I've definitely been there. I'm sure many other people have. And it's a horrible experience. And you think, well, Jesus Christ, I just keep longing for the past. I keep longing for what I had. But you can't get that anymore. It's gone. Whether it be a relationship or loved one, whatever it is. My suggestion to you is pretend as if you lived that life and completed that life, and you've been reincarnated as who you are right now, with all those memories to teach you how to achieve all of that love again in a new way with your new life, okay? And that progression will hopefully inspire you enough to make a new life for yourself, as if you've been reincarnated as a new person. But you are still called the same name and you still have those memories to help you on your journey to your new life that you're going to rebuild. Very difficult for people who are connected. For example, child actors. It's so hard for them to reboot their life because a lot of them had such success as children, and then as an adult, they're like, what happened? Where's the success, the money, the fame? Where did it go? What am I doing with myself? And it freaks them out. They're not prepared or ready to handle normal, real life. And also society, unfortunately, oftentimes can make fun of them if they're working like a straight up job, like maybe they're working at a convenience store or something, or a supermarket or whatever. You know, I mean, poor Gary Coleman, who was like the star of Different Strokes, the #1 A-list celebrity. He was in movies and everything. He ended up being a security guard at some place, you know, and he was dealing with a lot of illness from his, I think it was kidneys, and a lot of problems with that. You know, and people would make fun of him or mock him and put him down for what? For being once successful and famous and now being just a regular human being who's working an honest, you know, living. So I had met him before he passed, and I just told him, hey man, thank you for everything. Happy that you provided to us as an audience with your wonderful, you know, skill as an actor and all the entertainment you provided. And, you know, I just thanked him for that. I wanted him to know that, you know, not everybody's a jerk, that since he's gotten that kind of in his life, which is just a sad kind of thing. So again, I just wish people could be more positive and uplift people versus always yanking them down. It's like I've had friends also like when we're all in trouble, we get along really great together. But once, you know, like let's say if I start to get a little bit of success with my art or on TV or something with the celebrities, I've noticed some of them get angry, resentful, jealous. They hey, why is he doing this? Well, I've been busting my ass to do this. It didn't just happen magically. You know, I had to bash down door after door after door after door until it worked. So those are the friends that you have to kind of distance yourself from because they put you down. They pull you down. They're not lifting you up. It's like Cinderella's story, right? You know, Cinderella's not bothering anybody. She finds these little things. She makes this nice little dress so she can go to the ball, right? And what happens? Her stepsisters rip the dress apart and tell her she's nothing. See, that's the kind of crap you got to stay away from in life. But again, I'm veering so much all over the place. I want to try to refocus back on how to deal with some of the concern. Is this hell? Is this heaven? How do you deal with suffering? So one of the thoughts that I have been very concerned about is what kind of place are you in right now? And again, I warn you, do not watch this if you are not ready to hear upsetting information. Wait, watch it with a friend. Kind of balance yourself out. I'm not trying to freak anybody out with what I'm about to say. I'm just trying to open your mind up to something so that you feel acknowledgement and maybe we can find a solution for it. So people are always oftentimes, you know, saying, well, wait a minute, what kind of place do we exist in where people can be maimed and, you know, murdered and there's loss and death and dying and suffering, a lot of suffering. You know, Christopher Reeve, Superman, the ultimate human being who can fly and jump in the air. My gosh, I mean, he was a strong, strapping, handsome, tall, powerful guy. And then he breaks his neck and he's in a wheelchair. Can barely breathe. He uses a machine to breathe until he eventually passes away. Tragic. So any place that could happen, what kind of place is that? It's not heaven, right? Because that can't happen in what we describe as heaven, right? So that leaves us one horrifying option, that we are in what is talked about as hell. If that's true, it makes a lot of sense because that would explain why there's so much suffering. Maybe we're meant to feel love and happiness simply so it can be taken away from us to feel suffering and pain. Now stay with me, don't leave yet. There is a light that I'm trying to reach you to. But if you have experienced the kind of pain and suffering anywhere near what I've experienced, then you understand that that's a very high likelihood that we're in a place that is definitely not heaven. But our mission here might be to find heaven and make and create heaven in this place of hell that we're in. And if we can do that to the best of our abilities, then maybe we can graduate this plane of consciousness and existence and move on to a life where there is no suffering, where there is no pain, if there is such a thing as an afterlife. And what is an afterlife? Well, it would mean that your energy that's powering your body continues on, and potentially having that theory of the Akashic records that hold and store data, which is information, through, like, maybe it's sympathetic harmonics or through sound waves or through vibrations or through a frequency of information. Just like when you're on a cell phone, a frequency of information is beaming from one person on the cell phone, beaming up to the satellite and back down to your cell phone or to the tower and back over. That's a simplified version again, of course. But you understand the idea is that there is data, there's information that's being beamed through frequency wirelessly into your phone. Well, why can't the soul, consciousness, the spirit be that beam of consciousness, be that beam of data, that stream of information, and that kind of actual frequency, boom, coming into your wireless device, your brain? You understand? Which of course would make different parts of the brain light up and do what it does when they're doing scans of the brain and tests, and you understand where different emotions and chemicals come from. So a lot of people say, well, wait a second. The body is nothing more than an organic machine. So when it dies, so do you. I disagree. I think it's both. Again, coming back to balance, both sides. It's both. I believe full-heartedly that there is some form of consciousness somewhere out beyond a place that we can get evidence or study. I think we are the evidence, but again, since we don't fully understand everything, it's hard to test it, right? And how do you test something that's not within your reach? It's impossible. Okay, I mean, it might be outside of reality. What does that mean? You know about the tetrahygons and all that kind of stuff. And you know, if you understand matter and what we're all made out of, and you understand that I am made out of the same thing that my t-shirt's made out of, which is the same thing those guys are made out of, which is the same thing my building and this computer and this cell phone I'm talking into and this camera I'm talking into is made out of. It's all made out of the same stuff, matter. Okay, it's manipulation of matter. So if you understand what that means, and you know, as Neil deGrasse Tyson, who I met and had a really great conversation with, you know, stated again, we are stardust. Okay, we're all stardust, a simplified version of it. And what that means is that we are dust particles from the stars or from the sky or from space or the atmosphere, if you want to bring it all into Earth here. And then boom, this is what happens. So the idea here is that I full-heartedly believe and wholeheartedly believe that there is a conscious plane of energy existence that is aware of itself. And that thing is beamed, okay, wirelessly into our modem, our brain. All right, and this is the organic structure that is built that works completely autonomously without that, because again, when you're sleeping, you're not controlling your breathing, you're not controlling your body temperature, you're not controlling your heart beating. It's done for you. So this structure, this vehicle, this physical form that I am possessing, like a ghost possessing a machine, or Ghost in the Machine, or again, you know, Ghost in the Shell is kind of based on that if you think about it. There is this spiritual entity that's possessing this physical matter, this robot. So I think both exist. I think there's two things happening here. There is this autonomous machine, and then we infuse into it. We infuse our consciousness into it. And I believe that this thing is what helps us identify ourselves, to know that we exist. We may have always existed and never known it. It's very hard to understand infinity. It's very hard to understand something where there was no beginning, where there only always was, forever and always was. So I think that the universe potentially always existed forever. I don't think there was a start to the universe. I think it was always there. Then some things happened, okay, Big Bang, etc., and then now we're at this point. So again, it's a very simplified version, but I don't have, you know, the next 17 hours to speak on this video, if you're still watching. But if you are, the thought process here